Rhea Khalaf, Director of Collaborative Research and Partnership at Finamed Network. Rhea will moderate the question and answer period. Merci à toutes les personnes qui se sont inscrites à ce webinaire. À la fin de ce webinaire, il y aura une période de questions de 15 minutes. J'invite les personnes inscrites à poser leurs questions par écrit. L'Institut de valorisation des données IVADO est né d'une initiative de HEC Montréal, Polytechnique Montréal et l'Université de Montréal, qui regroupe plus de 120 partenaires industriels, académiques et gouvernementaux. Avec plus de 1450 scientifiques, IVADO est un centre de compétences avancées et multidisciplinaires dans les domaines des statistiques, de l'intelligence artificielle et de la recherche opérationnelle. Technological advancements have brought about remarkable conveniences like smartphones, and our payments ecosystem needs to keep pace. Deputy Governor will talk about how the Bank of Canada is contributing to modernization efforts and how the COVID-19 pandemic makes it all the more urgent to make payments more convenient for all Canadians, including cross-border payments and the potential digital currency. Comme mentionné, nous avons le plaisir d'accueillir le sous-gouverneur à la Banque du Canada, M. Timothy Lane. Mr. Lane became Deputy Governor of the Bank of Canada in 2009. In this capacity, he shares the responsibility for decisions with respect to monetary policy and financial stability. He also oversees the bank's funds management and currency functions, including the bank's ongoing research and analysis of developments in financial technology, crypto assets, and digital currencies. Mr. Lane served for 20 years on the staff of the International Monetary Fund. During that period, he contributed to IMF analysis of numerous countries and conduct research on a wide range of topics, including monetary policy, financial crisis, IFM reform, and economic transition. En 2008, il a rejoint la Banque du Canada en tant que conseiller du gouverneur, un poste qu'il a occupé jusqu'à sa nomination actuelle. M. Lane est titulaire d'un baccalauréat spécialisé de l'Université Carleton et d'un doctorat en économie de l'Université Western. Mr. Lane, the floor is now yours.
Merci de cette introduction et merci de m'avoir invité parmi vous aujourd'hui. Comme moi, vous devez être nombreux à vous ennuyer des conférences en personne. Mais on a quand même la chance de pouvoir se réunir grâce à la technologie. Bien sûr, le passage à une plateforme numérique est seulement une des nombreuses conséquences de la pandémie. La COVID-19 a emporté beaucoup trop de vies, dont plus de 20 000 au Canada. Ces effets ont durement frappé les ménages et les entreprises partout au pays. Pratiquement du jour au lendemain, l'économie canadienne est entrée dans sa pire crise depuis la Grande Dépression. Il va sans dire que la numérisation dans nos vies personnelles et professionnelles s'est accélérée, ce qui est un autre effet majeur de la pandémie. Aujourd'hui, je vais surtout parler des effets de cette évolution sur le monde des paiements. En particulier, sur la façon dont les consommateurs et les entreprises paient pour les biens, des services et des actifs financiers. Pour commencer, je vais parler un peu des conséquences économiques de la pandémie sur la numérisation. Ensuite, je vais expliquer les implications de trois grands enjeux du monde des paiements. The first is the concept of a central bank digital currency, a digital loonie, as it were. For several years, the Bank of Canada has been analyzing what circumstances might lead Canada to decide to issue a digital currency. The pandemic may bring us to a decision point sooner than we had anticipated. Next, I'd like to look at the major program of payment system modernization that is now underway in Canada. Consumers and businesses will start to see the benefits of this modernization rolling out this year and next. The pandemic has underscored the importance of expanding the reach of real-time payments. Finally, I will address the issue of cross-border payments, which are often slow, expensive, and vulnerable to fraud. The bank has collaborated with international partners on a roadmap to address the pain points in cross-border payments. We are fully committed to working with the public and private sectors to make any necessary changes in Canada to support this. The digitalization of the economy was well underway before COVID hit, but the changes brought on by the pandemic have been rapid and far-reaching. As a society, we had to quickly implement the virtual world workplaces we had largely only been imagining. Nearly 1/3 of Canadians are mostly working from home, including me. I've been in my office only about 8 times since last March. In addition, many students continue to learn virtually. COVID has also changed how we shop. A survey of Canadian retailers shows that e-commerce has nearly doubled from its pre-pandemic levels. Businesses are responding to the pandemic by incorporating new technologies into their operations. In our most recent Business Outlook survey, nearly 2/3 of participating firms reported that they are making some kind of digital investment. Expanding their business online was commonly cited as the reason for these investments on both the operations and the client-facing side. Parmi ces changements, notons que les paiements prennent une place de plus en plus importante. Par exemple, une enquête de novembre 2020 a montré que 2/3 des petites entreprises acceptent les paiements en ligne et la moitié d'entre elles ont commencé récemment. Même en magasin, les Canadiens semblent employer davantage les paiements sans contact. Selon Interac, le volume des transactions réglées par Flash Interac a augmenté d'à peu près 2/3 entre avril et juillet de 2020. Des enquêtes menées auprès des consommateurs montrent aussi que l'utilisation des paiements sans contact a augmenté. La banque surveille ces tendances de près. On s'intéresse surtout à la façon dont la pandémie a changé les habitudes d'achat de biens et services. Bien sûr, il faut saisir toutes les occasions d'offrir aux Canadiens des modes de paiement toujours meilleurs, moins coûteux et plus rapides. Commençons par les billets de banque. La technologie et les innovations qu'on a tous adoptées ont changé bien de choses, mais pas vraiment l'argent comptant. C'est vrai que la banque a trouvé des façons créatives et novatrices de moderniser ses billets, mentionnant les éléments de sécurité ultramodernes pour éviter la contrefaçon. Un autre exemple est l'utilisation du polymère au lieu du papier. On a aussi fait des efforts pour que les images et les portraits utilisés sur les billets représentent l'évolution de notre pays et son caractère unique. Mais quand même, les billets en soi n'ont pas changé. Ce sont toujours des objets concrets. Cela dit, depuis une dizaine d'années, la Banque se questionne sur l'avenir des billets. Le Canada et les Canadiens auraient-ils avantage d'avoir un argent comptant sous forme numérique? In a speech in Montreal a year ago, I gave our preliminary view that we did not see a need for a central bank digital currency, a digital equivalent of banknotes, at that time. But we could imagine scenarios that could make a central bank digital currency beneficial in Canada. I concluded that we would be moving forward to develop such a digital currency as a contingency plan, given how quickly the world is changing and the time required to develop a viable product. A year later, our view remains unchanged. A digital currency is by no means a foregone conclusion. This said, the world has been changing even faster than we expected. In fact, just 2 weeks after I spoke, the first lockdown was imposed, which accelerated the evolution of the digital economy, as I've just been discussing. So our work to prepare for the day when Canada might want to launch a digital loonie, backed by the Bank of Canada, has also accelerated. In these explorations, we're not alone. In a recent survey, almost 60% of central banks reported the possibility that they will issue a central bank digital currency within the next 6 years. That's up from less than 40% only a year ago. One scenario we've been watching is whether a sharp decline in the acceptance of cash might reach a tipping point in Canada. We've already seen that cash has been losing ground over time, over the last several years, in fact, to digital means of payments as societies and economies modernize. And that's been happening around the world as well as here in Canada. Since COVID hit, we've seen more and more people in Canada hesitating to use or to accept cash. In recent Bank of Canada surveys, consumers report some merchant preferences for contactless payments, and some report experiencing merchants refusing to accept cash due to fears of virus transmissions. Of course, it's too early to tell whether these trends will continue beyond the pandemic, but we're watching them closely. The other scenario I raised in my speech last year is the increasing use of digital currencies created by the private sector, including cryptocurrencies and so-called stablecoins, en français, crypto-monnaie et crypto-monnaie stable. While these products have existed for several years, some could see a boost from the acceleration of digitalization in the midst of the pandemic. Même si l'économie se numérise de plus en plus, les crypto-monnaies comme le Bitcoin ont peu de chances de devenir l'argent du futur. Ce sont des moyens de paiement vraiment imparfaits, sauf pour les activités illégales comme le blanchiment d'argent, quand la priorité est de rester anonyme. Leur méthode de vérification coûte trop cher et le pouvoir d'achat est trop instable. La récente flambée de leur prix ressemble plus à un mouvement spéculatif qu'à une tendance. Il suffit d'un tweet populaire pour que les prix explosent. De leur côté, les crypto-monnaies stables sont pour la plupart garanties entièrement ou en partie par des actifs sûrs. Leur pouvoir d'achat est donc plus stable. Elles ont le potentiel d'être adoptées à grande échelle pour les transactions courantes, mais aucune n'est proche à ce stade, à présent. Il reste beaucoup de points à régler avant qu'on considère les crypto-monnaies stables comme sûres pour le grand public. Le Conseil de stabilité financière a mis sur pied un groupe de travail international que je préside pour examiner ces enjeux dans le contexte mondial. Et chez nous, il y a encore du travail à faire pour que notre cadre réglementaire s'applique à ces nouvelles monnaies. Et naturellement, il faut étudier les risques potentiels. Amid all of these developments, two fundamental questions need to be addressed. First, are there benefits to issuing a digital form of money? And if yes, who should do so? In response to the first question, we don't yet know whether many Canadians will actually want to use a stablecoin or any other kind of digital currency when they have other alternatives available, including cash, debit, credit, and e-transfer, all of which are also digital. With the addition of a digital form of cash to the existing suite of digital payments methods, meet a real demand and enhance the evolution of a competitive, vibrant digital economy. More work is clearly needed to identify the potential benefits to users compared with other alternatives. In response to the second question, if the public does want a digital, cash-like currency, some good reasons exist why a central bank should be the one to issue it. Currency is a core part of the Bank of Canada's mandate, and the integrity of our currency is a public good that all Canadians benefit from. Only a central bank can guarantee complete safety and universal access, and with public interest, not profits, as a top priority. Laissez-moi vous donner un exemple. Dans l'économie numérique, on dit que les données sont le nouveau pétrole. Beaucoup d'entreprises technologiques utilisent les données de leurs clients pour adapter et élargir leur gamme de produits et services. Elles peuvent alors attirer plus de gens sur leur plateforme et collecter plus de données, et ainsi de suite. Si le principal mode de paiement de l'économie reposait sur ce modèle d'affaires, son émetteur aurait le contrôle d'une énorme quantité de données. Imaginez alors son pouvoir du marché. Une entreprise technologique pourrait donc avoir les clés de toute l'économie, ce qui serait inquiétant pour la protection de la vie privée, la concurrence et l'inclusion. Comparons ce modèle avec celui d'une monnaie numérique de banque centrale. Les banques centrales n'ont pas de motivation commerciale à collecter des données. Elles sont donc les mieux placées pour intégrer à leur monnaie des mécanismes de protection de la vie privée, tout en empêchant les utilisations criminelles. Les Canadiens tiennent clairement à protéger leur renseignement personnel et c'est dans l'intérêt public que notre monnaie offre un certain degré de confidentialité. Universal access would need to be another key feature of any central bank digital currency. That means, for one thing, ensuring that remote and marginalized communities are not left out of any new way to pay for goods and services. And that includes, but is not limited to, the unbanked and the underbanked. As part of our advancing work, the bank has been researching and experimenting with different technologies. In addition, we've recently engaged 3 university teams to develop independent proposals for what digital currency ecosystem could look like. Their reports will be released tomorrow. This kind of blue sky thinking will help inform our research going forward. We are also carefully considering what the business model for a Canadian central bank digital currency might look like. What role would the private sector play in its development, distribution, and transfer? How would this product interface with Canada's core payment systems that transfer funds among financial institutions to settle both retail and large-scale payments? So let me now turn to talk about those core payment systems. Long before the pandemic hit, efforts to modernize Canada's core payment systems were well underway. This work is important, and with the rapid expansion of the digital economy accelerated by the pandemic, we'll be seeing the benefits even more clearly. Led by Payments Canada, several key players in the payments ecosystem, such as Interac, commercial banks, and other stakeholders, have been working to bring these payment systems fully into the modern digital age. The Bank of Canada is heavily involved as a central bank, a regulator, and in some cases, a participant. Over the next year or so, these improvements will start to come on stream. This is important for Canadians because it will mean greater speed, convenience, competition, and choice in how they're paying for goods and services. Right now, the fastest and most immediate money transfers we have are e-transfers. But with the new real-time rail system, which will go live in mid-2022, we'll see real-time payments beyond what is already offered through e-transfer. When this innovation is complete, we can imagine scenarios like these. Businesses being able to pay part-time workers immediately upon completion of a shift. Home buyers putting down a deposit on their first home with a click of a button instead of having to physically take a bank draft or certified check to the lawyer's office. And governments being able to distribute emergency funds in a matter of seconds directly into citizens' bank accounts. La Banque aide aussi à améliorer d'autres systèmes de paiement de base, notamment par le lancement de Lynx, le système interbancaire qui va remplacer le système de transfert des paiements de grande valeur cet automne. Lynx profite des technologies dernier cri, y compris de meilleures protections contre les cyberrisques et d'autres types de risques. On cherche aussi à améliorer le système qui sert à la compensation des chèques et d'autres paiements de faible valeur. Ces améliorations vont donner aux consommateurs plus d'options de paiement numériques pratiques. Je vais prendre quelques minutes pour vous décrire deux autres nouveautés importantes qui vont compléter ces changements. La première est liée à la supervision des paiements en détail. En août dernier, la surveillance du système virement Interac s'est ajoutée au mandat de la Banque du Canada. Et le gouvernement du Canada a annoncé son intention d'élargir le pouvoir de surveillance de la banque aux fournisseurs de services de paiement. On parle ici d'entreprises qui ne sont pas des banques traditionnelles, mais qui se spécialisent dans le traitement des paiements au public. En s'assurant que les risques sont bien gérés, la banque va soutenir la confiance à l'égard des fournisseurs de services de paiement. Ainsi, elle devrait encourager davantage la concurrence et l'innovation dans les paiements en détail. Second development I'd like to mention is open banking, which will remove the barriers for banking customers to safely and easily share their financial information if they choose to engage other service providers in managing their money and other assets. Open banking will help promote greater competition and choice by allowing consumers and businesses to more easily compare the products and services that various financial institutions may offer. Several countries have already introduced open banking, and our federal government has launched consultations in how to implement it in Canada. This is being done to ensure that innovations are balanced with data control and privacy considerations. We have come a long way, but there is more work to do. And this work takes on greater urgency as we find ourselves in an environment where the current system's shortcomings could limit the ability of consumers and businesses to pursue the opportunities created by the digital economy. Thankfully, Canadians can look forward to significant improvements in the speed, convenience, efficiency, and choice of digital payments in the near future. This is an important part of the Bank of Canada's responsibility to promote safe, sound, and efficient financial systems. I'd now like to turn to the issue of cross-border payments, an area that has an obvious and pressing need for improvement. Sending money abroad has for a long time been notoriously slow and expensive for individuals and businesses, so much so that it may even interfere with lives and livelihoods. Issues with cross-border payments affect millions of Canadians. This includes new Canadians who send money to families in their country of origin. It includes snowbirds who split their time between Canada and warmer climates, although not this winter for the most part. And it includes many Canadian businesses that face unnecessary costs and delays in paying for supplies and services from abroad or in receiving payment for the things they sell outside the country. Au-delà de nos frontières, les problèmes sont encore plus pressants dans les pays en développement. Là, beaucoup de gens comptent sur les membres de leur famille à l'étranger pour leur envoyer de l'argent. Ils en ont besoin pour acheter des produits comme de la nourriture ou des vêtements et pour s'instruire. La plupart de ces besoins sont devenus plus urgents en raison de l'impact inégal de la pandémie dans le monde. En bref, les problèmes liés à l'envoi d'argent à l'étranger peuvent empêcher les gens et les pays déjà appauvris de participer pleinement à l'économie mondiale. En fait, ces problèmes ont été soulevés pour justifier la création et l'utilisation des crypto-monnaies et des crypto-monnaies stables. Mais il est possible d'améliorer les paiements transfrontaliers sans ces méthodes de paiement, car ces méthodes ne pourraient pas à elles seules régler les problèmes liés à ces paiements. D'ailleurs, la Banque du Canada s'est jointe à des partenaires internationaux pour créer une feuille de route visant à résoudre certains de ces problèmes. Ce travail se fait dans le cadre d'une initiative soutenue par le G20 et coordonnée par le Conseil de stabilité financière. Le principal objectif est de favoriser des paiements transfrontaliers qui soient à la fois plus rapides et moins coûteux, mais aussi plus accessibles et plus transparents. As I mentioned at the beginning of my speech today, we have identified numerous pain points in cross-border payments. Technological shortcomings certainly pose problems with different messaging standards in different countries. Anti-terrorism and anti-money laundering regulations, while crucial for our safety and security, can also slow down the transfer of money with multiple compliance checks. And of course, there are numerous time zones to consider. When you send money from Ottawa at noon all the way to Cambodia, the local payment system there isn't open at midnight to process the funds. The G20 roadmap is extensive and lays out work that several different organizations will carry out. For our part, the bank is working with partners internationally, most notably the Committee on Payments and Market Infrastructures at the Bank for International Settlements. But just as important, we're also working to support the coordinated domestic effort that will be necessary to identify and address the most pressing issues from a Canadian perspective. For all these efforts to be successful, central banks and other authorities around the world will need the cooperation of public and private sector partners in their own jurisdictions. Only then can we make lasting improvements to cross-border payments and ensure that people, businesses, and nations around the world have the best opportunity to truly participate in the global economy. En conclusion, les Canadiens peuvent tenir l'écosystème de paiement actuel pour acquis. C'est parce qu'on peut acheter les biens et services assez facilement. Ça n'a pas toujours été le cas. À une époque, il était pratiquement impossible de faire un gros achat impulsif la fin de semaine parce que les banques n'étaient pas ouvertes pour qu'on puisse retirer de l'argent. Mais ça ne veut pas dire qu'il n'y a pas d'autres moyens d'offrir aux Canadiens un plus grand choix pour payer leurs biens et services. Les modes de paiement numériques font partie intégrante d'une véritable économie numérique et ils peuvent ouvrir des possibilités presque infinies pour encore plus d'innovation. Et puisque tout le monde doit vivre avec les conséquences personnelles, professionnelles et économiques de la pandémie, c'est encore plus important que la banque continue ce travail. The bank will continue to explore the possibilities of a digital currency that would be an electronic version of the banknotes that Canadians already trust and rely on. We would issue such a currency only if and when the time was right, with the support of Canadians and the federal government, and with the best evidence at hand. Meanwhile, we can and will make our core payment systems more effective and efficient to help consumers and businesses exchange funds in real time. And we will push forward with work to make cross-border payments cheaper, easier, and safer for people around the globe to send and receive money. Je vous remercie encore de votre attention. Maintenant, je serai content de répondre à vos questions dans la langue officielle de votre choix.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le sous-gouverneur. Thank you very much, Mr. Lane, for your speech. I am Rhea Kalaf. I am Director of Collaborative Research and Partnerships for FINAMEL, an academic member of IVADO, and I am happy to be here today to moderate the question and answer period. On va commencer la session des questions. J'invite tous les participants de continuer à poser leurs questions dans la place allouée. I will start with the first question. How do you see initiatives from central banks in other countries compared to Canada's ideas? And which countries are considered more innovative or more proactive and can be followed as an example?
Thanks. Well, that's a very good question. As I mentioned in my speech, of course, in fact, most central banks are exploring the concept of central bank digital currency. At some level, we're certainly one of the front runners in that area. We've been looking at this issue as a research topic for about for over 7 years now, and certainly among central banks, I would say we're among the leading central banks in with regard to the sort of analysis of the issues and exploration of the technology. But there are some other central banks that are actually further ahead in implementing a CBDC. Maybe one I would mention is the in the Bahamas, where the issue is really about getting banknotes to a number of different islands, and there's a benefit to having a digital form of banknotes to replace cash, and so it's a tool of financial inclusion, and that's a project that's already been launched. Another example is in China, where of course, the authorities have now moved to the point of actually doing a pilot project that involves tens of millions of people, and so those are examples where we've actually seen central bank digital currencies either being launched or being moved towards being launched. But our situation's a bit different here because we have, to start with, already have a very well-functioning financial system and a payment system that the Canadians can use and rely on. And so the bar is quite high in terms of the improvements we could make with a digital currency, and also because we have very high standards in terms of the acceptable level of privacy and resilience and convenience that we would attach to a digital currency if we were to launch one. And so we're actually more in line with another group of central banks, which are more advanced country central banks, and we've been actually partnering with a group of them, with 6 other central banks, to explore these ideas. And those central banks are largely looking at it in a similar way to the way I've been describing in my speech and in other communications.
Thank you. Sur un sujet relié à la crypto-monnaie, est-il envisageable que la Banque du Canada, à l'instar de ce qui semble se produire ailleurs, en Inde par exemple, se positionne pour l'interdiction de l'utilisation d'autres crypto-monnaies sur le territoire canadien?
Ce ne serait pas notre décision. Les crypto-monnaies sont maintenant sont réglées par les autres autorités financières c'est une combinaison d'autorités fédéraux et provinciales qui sont responsables de la réglementation de ces produits. Alors, et jusqu'à maintenant, il n'y a aucun plan d'interdire les crypto-monnaies, mais nous avons souligner les risques associés à ces crypto-monnaies parce que notre jugement que les crypto-monnaies ne sont pas vraiment la monnaie l'argent de l'avenir, et que jusqu'à maintenant, les crypto-monnaies sont plutôt un produit spéculatif qui a la capacité d'être utilisé pour des transactions illégaux, mais et aussi comme un actif spéculatif, mais pas pour les paiements quotidiens. Alors, ça, c'est notre analyse, mais l'enjeu de réglementation, ce n'est pas une décision que pourrait prendre la Banque du Canada.
You've mentioned inclusion as well, and inclusion and being able to reach digital technology for the total population. It's also an abstract topic to grasp for a lot of people. So how would you see the central bank making sure to educate the population about these innovative ideas?
Well, certainly if we were to launch a central bank digital currency, it would need to, first of all, be available in a form that could easily be used by the public. And so this could not be something that required very sophisticated knowledge of technology and so on. You'd have to imagine, for example, a card that people could use, a contactless card they could use in their everyday transactions, but which would have the attributes that would be similar to banknotes in the sense that it would be something created by the central bank and which would have our financial strength behind it. So that's part of it, is just the design would have to be such that it could be used very easily by a broader public. And we're currently exploring technologies that might enable that to be achieved. But of course, any effort to launch a central bank digital currency would, of course, have to be the result of public discussion. It would be a decision of the government to go ahead and create such a digital currency. Certainly, the current legislation doesn't allow for that, because the laws were passed long before this became a concept, and so there would need to be a level of public discussion about this to familiarize people with the whole concept before something like this could ever go live.
So if central banks, and not just Canada, but other countries as well, would make currencies directly available electronically, how would that answer to issues around privacy, social equality, for example, access to digital technology again, but also financial stability?
Okay, well, if we put your finger on some of the most important issues that we're looking at, and certainly privacy is a very central issue in this whole area. And the reason is that we're certainly aware that banknotes are desired partly because they are a private means of transactions, and that has a legitimate purpose in a free society, that people should be able to transact without having all of their personal information being observed by others, including their bank or by the government or anybody. And so if we were to design a digital currency, certainly one of the things we'd hope to achieve is a degree of privacy for everyday transactions. But then, of course, there is a dark side of privacy, as we know. I mean, banknotes are already being used for a lot of illicit purposes, including money laundering and various illegal transactions. And so, of course, a digital currency developed by a central bank couldn't be designed in such a way would open the door to massive abuse of that kind. So the problem is, well, how can you design it so that it's got an acceptable degree of privacy for everyday purposes, but still has the adequate safeguards against these other unsavory purposes? And that's something that we think that there are technological solutions combined with governance structures that would actually permit that, but it's something we're certainly in the process of exploring. You mentioned the social equality. I mean, certainly that's one of the things that is being is pretty central to our thinking, because certainly we're aware that many of the people who use banknotes currently are people who are poor, marginalized people living in remote communities where they have less access to banking services. And in that case, if we think of a society where banknotes are less and less used and accepted, which may be where we're heading, then those are the people who'd lose out the most. And so we would need to design a central bank digital currency that would actually reach those people. And that, again, that's something we're thinking about in terms of the technology and the way it would interact with other parts of the payment system. You mentioned financial stability, and that's, of course, a key issue in the sense that any new product is going to potentially affect the other products that are already out there. And of course, our sense is that, as we're developing this, we're thinking in terms of a bank-like, of a banknote-like product, of something that's similar to cash in its attributes, and would actually not be be designed to compete with a whole range of other financial products. But of course, the issue is sort of how do you design it in such a way that it is used for the intended purposes and not for other, doesn't have unintended consequences. And so that's certainly something that we've been looking at. There are research papers on our website that explore it, and we're continuing to work on how to manage any potential risks to financial stability that might be created.
You noted earlier that China is ahead of other countries with the launch of its Digital Yuan pilot. What are the implications for us, and could they benefit from first-mover advantage?
Well, there are a couple of aspects of that. The first one is that we can all learn from what's going on in other countries, and certainly everybody's watching what's happening in China with a lot of interest. Of course, they're starting from a different place. They're starting from a system where the banking system's is not very well developed, doesn't provide very good services to the public, but instead you have these big tech companies that provide payments mediums that are used all over the place. You have Alipay and WeChat Pay that are being used for everyday payments on a massive scale. And so they're starting from a very different place when they're developing a digital currency. So there's probably, as I said, there are some things we can learn from them, but there are other things that are quite different and we have to take into account. The other issue, of course, when any other central bank launches a digital currency is, could it actually come to be used outside its own borders? And we already see, for example, Alipay and WeChat Pay are used in Canada, but on a very small scale. Basically by Chinese tourists in certain locations where they're more likely to be wanting to buy goods and services. And so if we think of a Chinese central bank digital currency, it's likely that it wouldn't have a lot of appeal for Canadian consumers for everyday transactions because the Chinese currency is not our currency. It's having to convert from Canadian dollars into renminbi to use a digital renminbi it's just not something most Canadians would think of doing. And so there's not really the kind of first mover advantage in the sense of actually threatening to make inroads on our financial system. But we can certainly imagine a situation where other central banks would launch a digital currency that could come to be used increasingly in Canada, and that's something that we would certainly want to look out for, because it could actually, if that were to happen, if another central bank's digital currency were to start to get used in Canada, then that could be that could start to threaten the role of the Canadian dollar in the Canadian economy, and in a sense would be an infringement on our monetary sovereignty. So that's certainly something we would have to be alert to.
On a le temps encore pour quelques questions.
Oui.
Les banques commerciales, vous les avez mentionnées pendant votre discours. Comment envisagez-vous le futur de ces banques?
Certainement, les banques commerciales sont au centre du système financier canadien. Et alors, nous attendons pas que ce rôle central change, même avec l'introduction d'une monnaie digitale, monnaie numérique de banque centrale. Mais d'ailleurs, les développements dans le fintech pourraient affecter les banques centrales, parce que ça introduit un élément de concurrence dans beaucoup de produits financiers. Par exemple, s'il existe des plateformes pour livrer du crédit aux entreprises, cela introduit un élément de concurrence avec les banques qui met des pressions sur les banques d'améliorer leurs produits et leurs services, mais aussi pourrait avoir des effets sur le modèle d'affaires des banques. Alors, Alors, tous ces changements, toute la gamme de changements dans la technologie financière pourrait avoir des effets sur la façon de faire des banques, parce que le principe central des banques, c'est que les banques commerciales offrent une combinaison de services à leurs clients, les dépôts, les prêts et les services de gestion des actifs et plusieurs autres services, et non seulement aux particuliers, mais aussi aux entreprises. Et alors, le FinTech, parce que ça offre la possibilité de séparer quelques éléments de cette gamme de services des autres pourrait augmenter la concurrence. Et le résultat, la concurrence en général, c'est une chose qui a des effets positifs sur le bien-être des Canadiens, mais par contre, on doit gérer les changements et aussi être conscient des risques.
Et justement, par rapport à cette relation et au nombre qui se rajoute de FinTech, que ce soit des startups ou des PME, qui sont dans le domaine des paiements, est-ce que la Banque centrale travaille avec des FinTech? Et si oui, est-ce que vous avez des exemples? Est-ce qu'il y a de la place pour ces interactions-là entre la Banque centrale et les FinTech, comme par exemple on voit avec les banques commerciales?
Oui, certainement. Nous commençons à travailler avec des entreprises qui ont développé des technologies différentes pour les monnaies numériques. Et alors, il y a plusieurs entreprises maintenant qui ont développé des technologies dans cette sphère. Mais nous ne pouvons pas, je ne suis pas autorisé de discuter les détails parce qu'il y a des accords qui empêchent cela. Mais certainement, comme nous explorons les technologies, nous devons opérer en partenariat avec des entreprises qui ont la capacité de développer de nouvelles idées pour les moyens de créer des moyens de paiement. À la fin, comme j'ai mentionné dans le discours, il y a l'enjeu de comment seraient les liaisons entre une monnaie numérique de banque centrale et le secteur privé différentes. Et même maintenant, avec les billets de banque, on a des éléments de coopération entre le public et le privé. Par exemple, les billets de banque sont imprimés par une compagnie privée. Les banques offrent sont centrales dans la distribution des billets de banque. Alors, avec une monnaie numérique, il y aurait aussi besoin d'avoir une combinaison d'efforts du secteur privé et public. Mais quelle combinaison de public et privé est une question que nous considérons maintenant.
Ça nous donne un très bel aperçu de la situation au Canada aujourd'hui, de la Banque centrale. Je voudrais vous remercier pour vos discours aujourd'hui, Monsieur le sous-gouverneur. I'd like to thank the Bank of Canada and Ivado for the conference today and all the participants who are with us online. So thank you again and to all a good day.
Merci beaucoup. Bonne journée.
Merci. Bonne journée.